Hi, class. One of the requests that I saw come through on the survey that I sent out, Ms. B and I sent out today when you were working on your projects was, how do we cite our sources properly? So I just wanted to walk through what your obligations are for the project, what your bibliography should look like, and how you would cite any kind of images or quotes or charts that you put in your exhibit, I should say, on your exhibit, in your website, or in your documentary. Also, just a quick reference, if you do cite any information in your podcast as you're doing your podcast, you're also going to want to create a works cited page for that, and you can reference um, the information um, um, by last name, by author. It's probably the best way when you're talking about it in a podcast. Dr. Buchanan said, things like that. Or if you have images that you think are helpful, you could put them on a document and you could reference that document as an addendum to your podcast. So imagine if you were listening to the podcast, you might say, hi, listener, just to let you know, we're talking about this image that we're looking at together. If you wanted to see that image, you would go to this addendum that we've linked to the podcast, and they would be able to look at the image that you're looking at. I know I've heard that done in uh, radio programs, uh, audible books that are spoken, um, and I'm sure podcasts that would work fine. So if you did have an image or chart or something like that that you wanted to reference, you could reference it even within your podcast. So, well, the first thing I wanted to say is your bibliography will not be an annotated bibliography. So, although you will be adding sources because you're going to be adding images and quotes and things like that, the only information you need to put on your works cited are just the sources you cite in your project. You don't have to include any sources that you didn't use in your project. That's why we call it a works cited. So you're only citing in the works page those sources that you're citing on your project. Okay, so that makes it easy. But you do need to cite every single image that you use in your documentary or that you use on your website or that you use in your or on your exhibit. Okay, so it'll look like this, um, and you will hand this in when you present your exhibit, your documentary or podcast. You'll simply hand in a paper copy to your teacher, and we will have that on hand. We'll make sure that you've done it correctly. The easiest way to do this, again, just like you did before, use Noodle Tools. Because if you just simply choose MLA format and export to Google Docs, it'll literally export something that looks just like this. The only thing you'll have to add is your last name and the page numbers of the works cited. If you just have one page, you don't have to have a page number, but you do need to have your last name on it, so we would know whose works cited it is, because we'll have quite a few of those coming in. Okay, um, so that is your works cited. Now, if you're wondering, well, Mr. Bond, Miss B, how do we actually give attribution for the sources that we're putting onto our project? We're going to play this video, and this representative from National History Day does a very good job explaining what you will need to do. Okay, so that's what a credit is. You're going to do the same thing. This is for National History Day, and obviously you will do that in your documentary as well. So when you see in the next slide, you'll see how we've the individual who is doing a project on Alice Paul, how they have cited a picture of Alice Paul or credited a picture of Alice Paul. Now, you do not need to do captions, but captions are can be very helpful when you have an image. It does add it is included in your word limit for the exhibits and for the websites. But captions can be helpful, and especially can be helpful in the documentary. Um, um, but you do not need to have a caption. You do, however, need to have a credit. Okay, so this is a perfect example. Here they are crediting where they got the source from. This came from the Library of Congress. This was published in 1918, and they've given a little attribution that it's Alice Paul, so that the viewers would know. Okay, that's what Alice Paul looked like when she was a young woman in 1918. Now, one of the things I do want to show you is this. Um, let's go back to that MLA citation. Okay, let's say you don't have um, you know that information. Let's say you have a book and you've gotten a picture out of a book, or you've gotten a picture from a website. Let's say it's this incredible shrinking father, and you're doing a project on adoption rates of same-sex couples. Um, what you would do is, let's say you had an image. Let's say your image looks something like this. Okay, and you wanted to put this image in your documentary or in your website or on your exhibit. What I've done is I've posted the image in, and I got this image from this source. Let's go back and take a look at this Himowitz KS, the incredible shrinking father. So what I'm doing is I am just citing the last name of the author and the page number that I got it from. If for some reason you don't have a page number, let's say it's a website, you do the last name and the date of publication. All right, it's as simple as that. So this is as much of a credit that you need to give for an image, and it could be a chart, it could be a picture, um, or if you have more information, like we saw in the video, you could do it that way as well. So this is important if you're thinking about, okay, so thank you, that's very helpful. Now I know I need to credit each one of my images, and I can see how I do that now, whether it's in the documentary exhibit or website. Um, Now I can see why a caption might be helpful if you have an image that maybe somebody might not understand. Because remember, you're not going to be able to explain those images to them. You might know what it's about. You might know why it's important, why it's on that on your exhibit or website or documentary. But if you had a caption, it's definitely going to help people understand. Okay, so that brings us to the end. I hope this was helpful to you, and I'm going to be posting this for you on Classroom, of course, and you'll be able to see this and use it as you build your projects. Can't wait to see them all.